Meeting to order then. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. This is the joint legislative delegation Palm Beach County League of Cities workshop. It is December the 15th and it is 1 p.m. or just about. Once again, I thank you all for coming. My name is Jeff Hamara. I have the honor of serving as mayor of the village of Royal Palm Beach right next door. And I have found out that as a past president of Palm Beach County League of Cities, you can be called upon to do things very suddenly. So I find myself here. I think you all know that I am not J.P. O'Connor, and taking his place today. Actually, I'm retired Army, so in retirement, you find that the very first thing they tell you is that you become part of what's called the Individual Ready Reserve, and what that means is you can be called back to active duty at any moment in time. So I'm conditioned to this experience. So I ask you to bear with me, though, as I try to move us through the agenda here today, and I appreciate everybody showing up. We have already done the Pledge of Allegiance, and so I'm not going to ask us to recite that again for those who were here this morning. And then I'm going to turn to the welcoming remarks. So as I said, I want to welcome everybody. I really appreciate our legislative delegation for being here this afternoon. This is always an important meeting for us to get together and an opportunity to collaborate. And in these challenging times, I think collaboration at all levels of government is the only way that we will do the work that we are responsible for doing as representatives of our residents and our citizens. So I look forward to a good discussion. I sat through the one this morning, and it was an excellent discussion. So I look forward to following up with a similar one. Let me begin by introducing or asking my fellow league board members to introduce themselves. Want to start out?
Yes. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Alan Callback. I'm a mayor of the city of Atlantis and a member of the Palm Beach County League of Cities Board of Directors.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrea McHugh, and I'm the city manager for the city of Green Acres.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joaquin Almazan. I'm the vice mayor for the city of Belglade, District 5 representative for the Palm Beach County League of Cities.
Good afternoon, Amelia Jadu, the executive director for Palm Beach County League of Cities.
Great. Thank you all very much. Now I'll turn to Vice Chair, Representative Kelly Skidmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelly Skidmore. I represent District 92, which is parts of unincorporated Palm Beach County in Boca Raton, Delray Beach, and Boynton Beach. And it's a pleasure to be here. And I think we'll just go around the table if that's okay with our members. We'll start with Representative Gossett-Seidman.
That's okay. You can call me Peggy. Hi, I'm Peggy Gossett-Seidman, Boca Raton, Highland Beach, and Southwest County, District 91. This is my 4th year. Actually, I was 5 years serving on the League of Cities and board members as a board member and proud member of that. And thank you for welcoming us here today.
I'm Ann Gerwick. I represent District 93 in the Florida House, and I'm a previous president of Palm Beach County League of Cities. I'm glad they didn't have to go any further back to grab one, Mayor Hamara, and I want to thank Palm Beach State for having us here today. And one other thing I need to mention, because Mayor Hamara was here this morning, and when I listed my cities in my district, I did not mention Royal Palm Beach. My fault. There's a little tiny bit, the part of Royal Palm Beach that's south of Southern is in my district. So apologies again, Mr. Mayor. You got to wave your hand or something so I can recall the little tiny bit of Royal Palm.
Thank you for that. You can disregard my text message.
Okay, good.
Good afternoon. I'm State Senator Gail Harrell. I represent District 31 in the Florida Senate, and I have 16 cities in my district, so I won't name them all, but I do have Pahokee and I do have Royal Palm, among many others. I do have 3 counties, Martin, St. Lucie, and a good chunk of Palm Beach County, and it's a delight to be here. Thank you for hosting us.
Hello, I'm Rob Long, and I have been the state representative for District 90 for 6 days now. I just retired from Delray Beach City Commission, though, last week. So District 90 includes Delray Beach, Boynton Beach, Ocean Ridge, Briny Breezes, Gulfstream and the Village of Gulf.
And Mr. Chair, I might add a newlywed.
And a newlywed as of Friday. Yeah, big week.
Oh, was she waiting to see if she was going to go through with it if you won? Or?
Yeah, no, exactly right. If I'd have lost, I'd be a bachelor still, for sure. She told me, yeah.
And
On
Senator
the line.
Bernard.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mac Bernard, State Senator for District 24. I represent the village of North Palm Beach, the town of Palm Beach Shores, town of Lake Park, the city of Revere Beach, town of Mangonia Park, city of West Palm Beach, town of Palm Beach, town of South Palm Beach, town of Haverhill, town of Cloud Lake, town of Lake Clark Shores, city of Lake Worth Beach, village of Palm Springs, city of Green Acres, city of Atlantis, town of Lantana, town of Hypoluxo, town of Manalapan, and unincorporated Palm Beach County. So I represent a lot of places. So it's great to be here. The only thing is I do have to leave at 1:15, but would love to hear the presentation from the cities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much. We appreciate that. And knowing that we have a deadline, we'll move right into the agenda. I will tell you that, first of all, congratulations, Representative Long,
Thank you.
on so many things all at one time. You
Thank
really
you
know
very
how to do it up big, I'm telling you. It's fantastic. The County League of Cities has put together, as it normally does, a list of its legislative priorities that we seek your help with, and we have 7 of them this year. They are, I think there's a copy that everybody has been given. We will be talking about 4 of those, and so as to move things along, we'll begin with the very first presentation by one of our board members, and that would be Vice Mayor Almazan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone, again. I'll be presenting on municipal elections position for the Palm Beach County League of Cities. The Palm Beach County League of Cities opposes legislation that restricts voters' authority to set municipal elections. Elections of municipal officers are conducted during the general election in November or even numbers years unless the governing board of a municipality has adopted an ordinance or a charter to change the dates for qualifying for election of members of the governing board of the municipality. Many cities have staggered terms, meaning a 5-member council with 3 terms holds elections with 1 or 2 seats on the ballot. Staggered terms improve the stability of the governing board that allow for continuing of knowledge about the city operations within the city body, within the elected body as individual officials come and go over time. Over half of Florida cities have elections dates that differ from the date of the November general election in even-numbered years. For many cities, voters codify the municipal election date in their charter. Cities handle the cost of city elections and usually contract with local supervisory elections to conduct municipal elections on their behalf. Alternatively, many cities conduct their own election using their own voting systems and equipment, not contracted with local supervisory elections. The best time and date for municipal election will vary based on a community needs and a preference. It is a false assumption that higher voter turnout in November elections translates into increased voter participation on a municipal ballot issue in the same election. Combining municipal elections into the same date as a country, state, and national election will make it difficult for municipal candidates to compete for voter attention in saturated media markets and on crowded ballots. For half of cities that provide for runoff elections, municipal campaigns will be in full swing during the summer and winter holidays, when voters are highly distracted or absent and media access exceeds expensively. Who will be affected? Municipalities that currently hold elections on any date other than the date specified in the state law. Municipalities that currently hold elections on the November general election date in even number years, but which currently provide for a runoff election date after the November general election. Municipalities with staggered election dates. in both odd and even numbered years. The status. Proposals to prevent municipal election dates advanced in 2016, 2017, and 2018. SB 1460 was filed in 2025 session but did not pass. The bill sponsor vowed to file the bill again in 2026. SB 1460 would have required the elections for municipal offices be held on the same day as the November general elections in even-numbered years. If a municipality requires a runoff election, that bill would require such municipality to hold its initial election on the same date as the primary election on Tuesday, the 11th. 11 weeks before the general election, and to hold a runoff the same date as the general election. The bill will preempt to the state the authority to establish election dates for municipal elections and require that municipals recall elections to be held concurrently with municipal elections under certain conditions. The bill extends the term of the incumbent elections officers until the next municipal held per the new election dates required by the bill. So my delegation board here, this is why the Palm Beach County opposes this bill.
All right, thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the Florida Senate, I sit as the vice chair of the Ethics and Elections, and this bill has not come up in front of us, but I do support the league's position in regards to keeping the municipal elections during, like in Palm Beach County, most of them are in March, and to keep them that same way. The only issue that I do have an issue with, which is just to figure out ways for us to work on the qualifying periods, that we have 39 different cities, 39 different type of qualifying dates. And so after the municipal election this March and the runoff, and once we're back in Tallahassee, I'd love to work with the League of Cities and the SOE to see if we can come up with a better time frame that allows for most of the qualifying to take place at least around the same time.
We appreciate your comment. I think that's well noted and taken. So, I mean, that's something definitely we can work with the whole delegation here and, come with a common uniform for all qualification periods for all municipalities.
All right, thank you for that, Senator Bernard. Any other comments or questions on the topic of municipal elections? Okay, if
Mr.
not,
Chair,
then,
I'll just add, this has come up over the years, and I know some of the cities had moved theirs to the fall, and they had exactly the problem that you're trying to prevent, which was a lot of chatter from the higher elections, and people just didn't even go all the way down the ballot. So I support that position of letting them set their own, particularly when they're going to bear the expense. So thank you.
all right, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to the next priority, which is sovereign immunity, and that would be our city manager, Andrea McHugh.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you again for the opportunity to present this afternoon. In addition to serving as the city manager for the City of Green Acres, I am also on the Florida League of Cities Municipal Operations Legislative Policy Committee, current member of the Florida City County Managers Association Board of Directors, and past president of the Palm Beach County City Managers Association. I'm going to provide a little bit of background and then just kind of the status of where things are today, and just offer some closing remarks, so I won't take a lot of time. The Palm Beach County League of Cities supports maintaining reasonable limits or caps on monetary damages recoverable in negligence claims against governmental entities. Sovereign immunity, of course, as you know, is a principle under which government cannot be sued without its consent. The Florida Constitution allows the legislature to waive this immunity. Florida statutes allows for suits in tort against the state and its agencies and subdivisions for damages resulting from the negligence of government employees acting in the scope of employment. The last time cap limits were adjusted were in 2011, and no changes have been enacted since. Currently, caps are $200,000 per person, $300,000 per incident. Judgments can be awarded above these caps but recovering damages above the caps requires a special claims bill passed by the legislature. Last session, House Bill 301 made it through the House Judiciary Committee, but the Senate versions, Senate Bill 1570, failed to advance, so no changes in sovereign immunity were enacted during the 2025 session. On October 10, 2025, Representative McFarland filed House Bill 145, increasing caps to $500,000 per person and $1 million per incident for claims occurring between October 1, 26 through October 1, 31. For any claims occurring after October 1, 2031, caps would rise to $600,000 per person and $1.2 million per incident. The bill passed out of its final committee stop last week and is now headed to the floor of the House and is anticipated that it will pass during the first week of session. An analysis was recently performed based on inflation and taking into account the current caps listed of $200,000 and $300,000. With inflation since the 2011 caps have been put into place, we're at approximately $288,000 per person, $452,000 per incident. Our position is that this would be more reasonable, and more reasonable caps would be around the $300,000 per person, $500,000 per incident. One thing to note in House Bill 145 is that there is language that would allow local governments to settle claims above the statutory limits without a claims bill. Essentially, this means that there is no cap. The Palm Beach County League of Cities and the Florida League of Cities are opposed to this language and are requesting that this language be removed from the bill. In closing, as you know, capping tort claims against Florida's government entities is necessary to protect taxpayers while ensuring that cities can continue to provide essential services. We all know that police and fire carry an inherent high degree of risk. The ability to collect larger settlements or judgments against government entities may potentially serve to increase liability exposure, and we believe will incentivize litigation, threatening the ability to provide same level of services. Local governments are limited by state law in our ability to generate revenue or increase taxes. Increasing the sovereign immunity limits to unreasonably high levels puts cities at risk of financial burdens. In addition, the insurance market is volatile, and at times securing adequate insurance coverage is difficult for some cities. Some have seen large increases in insurance premiums over the last few years. Should support exist to increase caps, we would just ask that consideration be given for them to be reasonable. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak this afternoon.
Well, thank you for that. Are there any questions or comments among the delegation? Yes, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there a Senate sponsor?
Not at this time.
Follow up? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there a strategy for a House member to file an amendment to change the caps to the lower threshold?
It's my understanding that in my participation on the Florida League of Cities Municipal Operations Legislative Committee, that there are discussions and conversations about advocating for some type of reasonable increase and trying to find some common ground in the middle rather than going with what has actually been offered currently in the House bill.
Follow up?
Yes.
I'd just make a recommendation if the sponsor is planning to have that bill, if Representative McFarland is going to have the bill on the floor in the early weeks of session, it would be great to have those dollar amounts agreed upon by the Florida League of Cities so we can actually help you. Obviously, I'm in the minority party, and if the majority wants it to pass, it will. But if there's something we could do to make it more reasonable, we can certainly make every effort to do that.
Okay, thank you.
And then, Mr. Chair, can I have just a moment to recognize someone I forgot to
Yes, please.
recognize a moment ago, and that is Catalina Gallatin, who is the president of the Student Council at Palm Beach State College. Just wanted to thank her for being here today and for taking the step forward in her leadership. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on the subject of sovereign immunity? If not, I'm going to pick up on what you just did. I'm going to recognize the mayor of Palm Springs, who has joined us today, Mayor Bev Smith. Thank you for being here today. Okay, then moving on to the next agenda item, which is SB 180, and that will be presented by Mayor Kalbach from the City of Atlantis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the delegation. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you this afternoon. I serve on the Intergovernmental Relations, Emergency Management, and Mobility Committee of the Florida League, and this is where our position statement came from that I'm going to review with you this afternoon. And I have to say that there are extensive impacts throughout the state and including our area, and so we really look forward to your help on this. As you well know, Senate Bill 180 was signed into law in June of this year, and it was introduced as a post-storm emergency management measure to ease recovery efforts for state residents. The preponderance of Senate Bill 180's provisions were supported by the Palm Beach League and by the State League. However, Sections 18 and 28 go far beyond the objective of easing the burden on local residents. Instead, those provisions impede local government authority across Florida, regardless of whether a municipality was measurably impacted by a storm or whether properties in those municipalities suffered actual damage. Now, how are local governments impeded? First, there is an overbroad, ongoing exemption that applies prospectively and in perpetuity to municipalities located within 100 miles of a hurricane's quote-unquote track and prohibits them from adopting moratoria or quote-unquote more restrictive or quote-unquote burdensome land use regulations. Section 18 applies these restrictions for 1 year post-landfall. Section 28 applies them retroactively back to August 1 of 2024 and through October of next year. The second impediment to cities and throughout the state is the use of vague language that increases litigation risk. The unidentified terms of burdensome, more restrictive, and hurricane track create legal uncertainty. Moreover, Section 18 authorizes any person, regardless of any demonstrable legal injury, to sue a local government for alleged violations and awards attorney's fees to a prevailing plaintiff. Cities don't have anything on their side, but a prevailing plaintiff gets attorney's fees. Third, these provisions create an unachievable 14-day window for local governments to rescind a legal to rescind the regulation with a legal challenge to avoid a suit. But, in fact, statutory public notice and meeting requirements cannot be met within that time frame. Finally, these provisions are severely impacting resiliency and planning efforts in the face of severe storms and ever-increasing population growth in Palm Beach County and statewide. Updates, this is having a chilling effect right now, but updates to comprehensive plans and land development regulations are either stopped or in limbo. Even those required by state or federal law or recommended by ongoing vulnerability assessments. The legal status of thousands of regulations are uncertain because of the current provisions, voiding them, or the threat of litigation. And some examples of, for example, in Palm Beach, has adopted a comprehensive plan earlier this year, and they're working on an update to the zoning code based on that plan. But that's kind of in limbo as a result of this legislation. The Jupiter Center redevelopment overlay area project is designed to make Center Street a historic Main Street. That's now on hold because of uncertainty around these two provisions. And then the ongoing vulnerability assessments, including my community, recommendation under those assessments could be impacted by SB 180. These impediments, including the threat of litigation and the resulting costs it places on local governments, call for a common sense, fact-based, reasonable legislative relief to address presumably unforeseen consequences of Sections 18 and 28. What are those solutions? First, we would respectfully request your support for clarifying language. What would that clarifying language do? First, it would limit the scope to jurisdictions with measurable storm damage and to properties that are actually damaged. Second, it would restore local planning authority to enable local governments to enforce existing land use plans and regulations and appropriately update them post-storm to address newly identified issues. And it would limit unnecessary litigation by defining terms to avoid subjective interpretation and by resolving issues related to legal standing, pre-suit notice, and the opportunities for communities to cure, and moreover, one-sided attorney fees that go to plaintiffs. In closing, property owners and municipalities should not be subject to judicial interpretations that will play out in a lawsuit-by-lawsuit basis at great cost to local taxpayers. These issues, I would respectfully submit, should be addressed through the legislative process. We would be most appreciative of your consideration of our suggestions to address these SB 180 impediments that are impacting local governments in Palm Beach County and across the state, and we thank you for that consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Senator.
Thank you very much. And I've had many conversations with Senator DeSigley, and he is committed to making necessary changes in it. He is listening. And if you would be kind enough to get me a very specific list, detailed exactly what you have just stated, so that I can present that to him, and I'll be most happy to make sure he gets it directly.
Thank you. I can give you a copy of my statement, and then we have specifics that the league is working on, so whatever would be most helpful to you.
Yes, if you could give me a copy of it today, but also then a detailed, specific,
Right.
line by line within the bill as it passed.
They are working on that, and we'll get that to you.
Yes, if you will get that to me, I will make sure that I give it to Senator DeSigley.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions with regard to SB 80? If not, then we'll move on to...
Mr. Chair,
Oh,
I
I'm
think
sorry.
we did
Yes,
have a
Representative.
presentation on that this morning from Alessandro. Who's working on it in the House, the SB 180 rewrite?
Senator DeSigley filed SB 840, and the House companion has not yet been filed.
Okay, so there are revisions at work, so you might want to take a look at what he's filed for comment before you submit back.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much for that information. We really appreciate it. So we now can move on to the last item, which had quite a bit of conversation and will probably continue to be the point of a lot of conversation, and that is our priority that addresses property tax and homeowners insurance. And I get to do a presentation on that for you all. And hopefully it won't be too repetitive of what we heard from the county. It's interesting and probably not too surprising that our perspectives are very similar, and our concerns are likewise similar. So when municipalities raise concerns about property tax reform, the question is often asked whether cities actually oppose tax relief for homeowners. And the answer, of course, is we do not. We are as concerned about affordability as anyone. The concern that we do have, however, is the very broad, uniform changes that might be enacted that would have an impact that's unexpected somewhat on local realities, particularly at this time when operating costs are rising. So we have a number of things going on simultaneously. Over the past 5 years, municipalities across Palm Beach County, including Royal Palm Beach, which I know best, have experienced significant increases in operating costs across just about every core service that we provide. In fact, to be more specific, over the past 5 years, we have seen an increase in the cost, if you will, of doing government business at about 48% level, which when considered by comparison with the amount of property tax revenue that we have experienced as an increase, it is at about 50%. So you can see we are just barely keeping our head above water from a Royal Palm Beach point of view. In the Royal Palm Beach property tax revenue, in Royal Palm Beach, rather, property tax revenue represents approximately 1/3 of the village's general fund operating revenue. So it is a pretty big deal for us. The revenue supports essential services, including public safety, and I know we talk about that often, but obviously things like roads and drainage maintenance, and given that we have 18 miles of canal, that is also a major consideration. Parks and recreation are part of the quality of life that we provide in Royal Palm, and likewise other municipalities provide, and those would be affected by any significant reduction in property taxes. So we just want to remind everyone that this is a multifaceted result of any attempt to make major reductions in property taxes, and hopefully those reductions or those impacts will be considered as this conversation continues, which I'm sure it will. From fiscal year 2020 to fiscal year 2025, Royal Palm Beach's taxable property values increased, as I just said, at about 50%. But when competing with the increase that we are experiencing in so many different areas of providing those services, the fact that we were able to actually maintain a millage rate, which is among the lowest in Palm Beach County of 1.92 mils, doesn't change the reality of it just costs money to provide these services that our residents have come to enjoy, expect, and really are entitled to. Personnel costs, for example, have gone up between 20 and 25% over the last 5 years. One might say, well, why are we raising wages and benefits? Well, first of all, to retain quality employees, that's what's required. We're in competition. We're in competition with the private sector. And then when you have things like healthcare insurance costs that increase at a very high single-digit, if not double-digit rate over that period of time, that raises personnel costs substantially. Then other insurance costs have risen sharply with municipalities. For example, property and casualty insurance for municipalities have increased between 40 and 60% over that same period of time. These are important to us, obviously, to be able to protect our buildings, our vehicle fleet, liability coverage in all of our parks and places like that. So that is an important cost which we must bear the burden of. Infrastructure and capital-related costs also escalated significantly. In Royal Palm Beach, we experienced roadway and asphalt material cost increases as much as 50% when compared with 5 years before that. A common question that's often asked is, why not just roll back the millage rate? Well, the answer lies in the fact that we've been very disciplined, and I think this is true of most municipalities within Palm Beach County and probably throughout the state, in providing a millage rate that we feel was absolutely necessary. And when you operate at that level, when someone says, well, why don't you reduce it? The answer is there's no capacity left. There's just nothing to take away from, short of actually reducing the services that we provide. Another question that's often asked about property tax revenue reductions is what can be done to replace that with alternative sources. That's a complicated issue. As it turns out, it's a function of how we're each organized, how our tax base is organized, what our primary drivers in our tax base is. If we are a tourism-driven sales tax base, if we have major downtown parking revenue available, if we have large commercial corridors that generate non-residential taxes, that city, those cities are in a very different place from those of us who are mostly residential oriented. And so these are part of the complications of trying to understand how, and I'm going to use a phrase that we've used from time to time. In fact, every time we go to Tallahassee, one size doesn't fit all well. And I can't think of a better example of that contention, that trying to come up with a very top-level solution to a very complicated lower-level problem, generally speaking, creates problems along the way that may be as substantial as the problem you're trying to solve. So I have a spreadsheet which has a tremendous amount of data on it, but one of the things that I find most interesting and maybe informative is the column on this spreadsheet, which, by the way, identifies all 39 municipalities in Palm Beach County, that identifies the percent of homestead tax among the total tax that are available under property taxes. Actually, the variations are so extreme, you get a sense of how different we really are if you just look at that one metric. For example, Mangonia Park has a percent homestead of the total tax value at 9.6%. On the other extreme is Lake Clark Shores with a 63.7%. And then in the middle, Royal Palm Beach, 41.4%. We are all very different. If you think about the impact of homestead on our property taxes, in our particular case, it's about, as I said, about 42% of our total property taxes. So anything that significantly reduces the homestead portion of our property tax has a substantial impact on Royal Palm Beach, but we're in the middle. And if you go to either extreme, you're going to find a dramatically different impact. And so I guess to kind of wrap up my comments for the time being and hopefully get into a little more discussion about this, I would just say, hopefully the understanding that I leave you with is we are not opposed to reform. We are just hoping to have a well-informed attempt to reform the property taxes as we go forward. And one last thought I would leave you with is we are all concerned about affordability and working together to try to find a solution to this. Actually, I do have one more thought, is clearly in everyone's best interest. And one of the lessons that I learned working in Washington for a number of years was if you're looking to make a significant impact on something that has to do with revenue, if you nibble around the edges and look at the small things, you're probably not going to have that impact. So if you look at the larger impacting cost that residents are faced with, one of the issues that I know the legislature has been working on keeps coming up again and again and again, and that's homeowner insurance. So while there's been progress in that area, when I hear that progress is, well, we brought on 17 new companies into the area and therefore it should drive down the cost, but so far the only indication is coming down from a 60 to 80% increase that we experienced over 5 years is we are now experiencing only an increase of 1%. That leaves some work to be done. So hopefully the legislature will focus and continue to focus on the effort to reduce the cost to our citizens of homeowner insurance. So with those final closing comments, I will then turn and see if anyone has any questions or comments on the subject of property tax and homeowners insurance. Senator.
Thank you very much for your comments, and I would you provide that list to us?
I
would
will.
very much like to have a copy
Okay.
of that as well. And, this is a very difficult discussion to have. As you say, each city is very, very different. Each county is very, very different. So we are looking for specific, or at least I know the Senate is interested in specific suggestions. So there's bills out there. We'd like to know, I personally would like to know the good, the bad, and the ugly of what you as a city and other cities have, in the League of Cities in particular, because you speak as one voice, representing a variety of cities of many different sizes and property tax income. So, I'd love to have from the League of Cities the good, the bad, and the ugly of each of the bills out there, and then other ways that you would suggest to address the property tax issue. On property insurance, this is a very complex issue. We've worked on this for the last 5 years. I know I've been very involved in it. I know exactly what's happened. I know what my property insurance has done, and I got depopulated out of Citizens, and actually was able to find on the market a more affordable price than I was paying for Citizens, a reduction in my property tax, my property insurance. But it's a very complicated issue, and a lot of it is driven certainly by storms. We're very fortunate this last year we didn't have a storm, but also by claims and litigation. 70% or 80% of litigation, 2 or 3 years ago, across the nation took place in Florida on claims. So it's been an ongoing fight over the last 5 years trying to address this issue. But again, I'm always open to specific suggestions. And if there's something that you feel if we addressed in statute and made changes that would reduce property insurance, I am all open. And it's a little late to file bills, but there's always something you can do an amendment on. And I'm the master of the amendment. So, but we are open for suggestions, very specific ideas that we could incorporate within property insurance reform.
All right, thank you, Senator. Any other comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Just a few things. There are different schools of thought on the issue. Senator Bernard and I have legislation that would create a national catastrophic risk pool. 2 different administrations of the Florida House, Speaker Sprowls and Speaker Renner, were presented with detailed information about how pooling risk would reduce premiums for Floridians by a minimum of 30%. That is a tangible number. That is a actuarially sound number. So when you can take someone's property insurance, reduce it by 30%, versus putting together a scheme that could potentially maybe save a homeowner, but only a homesteaded homeowner, $300 a year. I think that there are options that we have as policymakers. The policies that are being presented to us are not ones that we all agree on. Certainly, I don't agree with the property tax proposals that have been put forward, mainly because those property tax proposals do not have any kind of an implementation plan. It's a wish and a prayer. If someone could show me specifics significantly about what these proposals would do to individual budgets and individual homeowners and non-homesteaded individuals, and that was presented to voters before these are put on the ballot, people would have a very different reaction. Because quite honestly, most people are fine paying their taxes that provide the parks, the garbage pickup, the road improvements, all the things, and even excess sales tax that they voted for. An additional half penny for teacher pay, an additional half penny for parks. People chose to pay this. Why not instead offer combined reporting so that the parent company of an insurance organization doesn't get to write off all of its losses at the state level and earn all of its profits at the federal level? There are certainly things that we can do, and we all know what these are, and we choose not to do them in the legislature. And you should know, as the League of Cities, both Palm Beach County and Florida, that there are individuals in the legislature that are trying to move these specific policy proposals forward because we see them as significant savings to homeowners and residents in the state of Florida.
Thank you for that. That's very helpful. Any other comments?
Yes, I
Yes.
would like to speak, Mr.
Representative.
Chair. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't see.
It is philosophy, but some of it is just the natural events that happen when you live in a peninsula in the subtropics. I don't know the implications of having a national program. I just oppose that. The National Flood Insurance Program, of which Florida is a member, we're a donor. We're a donor to that program. Hard to believe, but other places in this country have worse flooding than Florida has. So I don't know how you would compel people in Idaho to share our risk. Compelling a national risk pool for insurance, first of all, it hasn't led to cost savings for Florida in the flood insurance program. I don't think it would help in that either. But I want to go back to the real philosophy of this. And we hear from people what they want done. And when you guys ask, when our residents contact us, they're your residents too, and they're contacting us because they don't like something. If you ask us to get involved, you're going to get a sledgehammer when you might have wanted a screwdriver, you know? So I want you to know that we are responding to what our residents want us to do, which is make things more affordable. There's only so many things we can control about the cost of homeowners insurance, but in fact, it's not just the fact that we're the most litigious state in the nation. It's also the fact that costs have gone up for replacement. Most of our homeowners insurance policies include replacement of those items that we're insuring, and all of those costs, just like cities have to spend more on pavement and concrete, so does that insurance coverage change. So some of these issues are really bigger than you think, and if you want us to solve it, sometimes you get things like SB 180. The intention was exactly what stated. We don't want people whose homes were destroyed by hurricanes to be impeded from replacing their property. So that's what that entire thing happened over. So be careful when you activate something from Tallahassee, because sometimes you get more government than you wanted. But we're all on the same side when it comes to taxes. We want our residents to have affordability in all of those aspects. It's not just homeowners insurance and the cost of living in South Florida. I can't make that affordable for everyone. I think it's unreasonable for us to say, I can make it affordable for everyone. This is one of the best places in the world to live, and that's driven up costs. So it's a tough nut to crack. I want to continue to try to crack it, but again, we're trying with a big hammer, and the state of Florida is so unique. If you look at Pensacola and Key West, how in the world would you ever put those in the same state? I mean, they're completely different. So when we do start with these intentions of making things better, I want you to understand that's the intention. I don't see a desire to really make it horrible for cities. I think, you know, we can just really not think about all the consequences. And I think SB 180 was one of those things that we will address. And, you know, I'll certainly support those changes that are being proposed. I think they will solve the problems. And we're trying to solve problems. So I appreciate all the input, and I agree with Senator Harrell. And basically everyone here, we want your input. We want specific things that can make the legislation better. And we're willing to work with you.
All right, great. Thank you. Did you have this?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I appreciate those comments, but I wonder if the same is, your view is the same as on property taxes as it is on insurance. You talk about a sledgehammer, that's a pile driver, what is being imposed on local communities. And I'll go ahead.
I will absolutely have some comments about that. I don't think any of the proposals, the House Joint Resolution proposals, address level of service. None of them address level of service, and none of them address accountability in spending. I mean, none of them address those two things. So if we want to talk about government efficiency and we want to talk about level of service, it's very, very hard to do that statewide. So I agree with you, but I also understand this is being pushed by people who've said, look at my home, look at my property insurance is one thing, but look at also the taxes I'm paying. Am I getting the value out of that? And I'm going to ask everyone in the room to go to the PAPA website. Most of us are in Palm Beach County. Go to the website, look at what you pay for your property taxes. There's a little map. You can click on your neighbors. What we did when we created the Save Our Homes, it was the best intention in the world, but played out over 25 and 30 years, it's made it so that I pay $10,000 property taxes on my house. And the next door neighbor to me who built their home a year and a half ago pays $23,500 on a very similar residence. So we created something with the intention of saving our homes. We don't want people to be priced out of the market. You built a home in South Florida, you live in South Florida, we want you to be able to afford it. But when we did that, and it played out over the years, it's made it hard for the people who are coming into the market. My son wants to buy a house in Palm Beach County. Well, he doesn't have anything to bring to the table. He can't, you say, well, portability. when you're buying your first home, you don't have portability. I mean, these are things that we did with the Save Our Home legislation, which I'm not saying we should get rid of. Please don't say that, because that's not what I'm saying. But when we move these levers, like we did with Save Our Homes, we aren't really looking forward to how that's going to play out in the future. And I want to make sure that whatever we do, whatever I vote on for property tax reform, isn't going to do that kind of a problem down the road. And it's hard.
But one way of dealing with that may be to establish standards. Start with that. I'll give you an example.
What do you mean by standards?
Well, what communities are doing to keep taxes low. And I'll give you an example. We reduced in Atlantis, we reduced the millage rate for 6 consecutive years and brought it down. We have extensive public involvement in workshops when we have our budget, in the services that we provide. If we're going to make changes in service, we put out notices. People come and they participate. We have been able to reduce the millage rate. This year, we weren't able to. And going to your point exactly, I pointed out to our residents that we're blessed because we have generations living in it, and we have kids that are now moving back that want to live in the community. The reality of that, because of Save Our Homes and the homestead exemption, is 48% of our residents don't pay for the basic services that they all want. So I outlined this in a letter to our residents and explained to them why we would have to increase our millage rate this year, because expenses were going up, but a good percentage of our population were not paying for the basic expenses they wanted. We had 2 budget hearings. People turned out and said, we don't want to cut in services. We know you're doing the best that you can to keep things under control. Increase the millage rate. Everybody was in favor of it. And what I'm saying to you is if communities are doing things like that, if they demonstrate that they have public involvement in their workshops, the setting of their budget, the services that are being provided, it's one thing if they and the communities are being accountable, and they are the ones that are closest to the coalface, as the chairman just said. Why not establish that as criteria? And if a community is not living up to that, if they're not happy with us, we get voted out of office because we're the closest to them. So I think there's a great deal of accountability. And as I said, my idea or my suggestion would be establish standards. And if communities aren't living up to that, then go, as I said, instead of the pile driver, go with some type of reform, because communities are not living up to their obligation to provide the most cost-effective service. I mean, the most cost-effective services at the lowest cost possible based on what their residents want.
Thank you.
So I would tell you that having spent 14 years in local government and holding budget hearings over and over, I had possibly 5 people come and give input on Wellington's budget. So what does that tell you? They're happy with it. They're happy with it. But overall, as a state, we hear that they want tax relief. And so I get both sides of it, but I'm not arguing with you about the accountability you hold to your local residents. I'm not arguing with you. What I'm telling you is that none of the propositions I've seen have addressed those things. That's what makes it hard for me, because I can't say, well, let's do this one, because none of them make sense to me, and I have said that publicly, and I still will, but you can't tell me what it means to have a standard. You can't tell me that garbage should only be picked up one day a week. I have 2 days a week in Wellington. Some cities don't have 2 days a week. But that's what we want. So I'm agreeing with you about level of service being different from city to city. I'm agreeing with you about public input, but you can't force public input. I mean, if you hold a public meeting and nobody comes to complain, you just pat yourself on the back about what a great local government we are, and we go on. But your residents are entrusting you to do the work, and they did entrust me. Mm-hmm. Sometimes maybe I should have activated them and said, wait a minute, I think we do have some fat here that we could cut. But that was never my style. I want people to take an active role in this, and I think that's true at the state level too. Come and tell us. If you think that we are disregarding your local issues, then come and tell us. And I can agree with you on some of it, but I can also agree that we need to do better in government. When the spending has gone up so drastically, I think Wellington almost doubled the budget the time I spent there. I mean, that's the numbers we're looking at. We're looking at the budget amounts, but you're looking at the day-to-day expenses. And if we're all responsible to our residents properly, we can do this job, but not if we're pushing against each other.
Certainly agree with that last comment. So if I could just jump back to the discussion about homeowners insurance for a second.
Sure.
Our village manager had proposed, and I think Representative Gerwig actually heard him talk about the use of citizens insurance in a different way than is currently being applied, which is to depopulate, as I understand. Okay, and so we'll be glad to provide an argument or write up a white paper, if you will, on this idea of how citizen insurance might be helpful in a way to control the costs of homeowners insurance, which as soon as you get into the private sector becomes a much more difficult aspect of it. And I understand the competition between public and private. You asked for some specifics. Be glad to provide that, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Am I able to disagree with that real quickly?
Go ahead.
Citizens is who? Who is citizens? It's us. It's us. So it's the taxpayers. So I don't want to take on unreasonable risks that Ray Liggins has on his property. I mean, we're talking about making things work together. And I don't want to take on the public risk for all that. I like the private system, but we need more competition. We need to keep the tort reforms that were set in place that are, and they are up every year. Trial lawyers have a lot of money to put on the table in Tallahassee. And so do insurance companies, and so do other businesses that want to not have that happen. Sure. But it's a struggle because basically the argument is I should be able to hire as just as good an attorney as my insurance company can, even though they're 1,000 times bigger than me, and they do this all the time. I can't make that work. I think that our job as the state is to make sure that your insurance company did what they promised you when you bought that policy. That's our job. Our oversight of insurance is to make sure that they are paying out what they agreed to pay out when you bought that policy. But I don't want to take everyone's risk. I see people very differently address risk. And if we as citizens all agree that we're going to take that risk together, I'm going to see some people that I'm going to say, no, I don't want your risk. You take too many risks. You never put your hurricane shutters up. You didn't do, there's lots of things about that I want to keep the private market and make it compete for the market to bring our price down differently than me be everyone's insurance carrier.
All right, thank you, appreciate that. We will provide the paper, though, so that you all can consider that. One other comment about considering the long-range impact of some of these things. Totally agree. So we've actually initiated something here in the county called the Countywide Transportation Master Plan, right? The whole idea was we were all trying to deal with pieces, our own pieces of this very large system that was very interactive and interdependent. And so we finally stepped in a direction of an actual coordinated, collaborative, big picture study to figure out what is the best set of combinations of things. And as I look at these 13 bills that I've counted so far, I could see bits and pieces of things that if they were brought together in the right way in the context of something that someone mentioned about needing an affordability study earlier, would help make that make sense. The opposition to something like that makes me uncomfortable, to be polite, maybe even suspicious, because that healthy, holistic view of a very complicated problem. I mean, my God, if it wasn't complicated, we wouldn't have all of these already. And the idea of bits and pieces of those things actually brought together in the right combination seems to be the best solution. Also with a long-range view, which again comes about when you put together a study that is very comprehensive. The absence of that, you wind up with these knee-jerk reactions, piecemeal approaches that result in a lot of unintended consequences, uninformed consequences. So if there's any way to resurrect an initiative to do some more holistic approach to dealing with the property tax issue, I'd be glad to help out, and I'm sure all of us would be, in whatever way we might be able to So with that said, are there any other?
Chair Skidmore, that did pass through the House and the Senate, that affordability study, right? That you talked about earlier.
No, I didn't talk about it.
Okay, we're talking about two different things.
Okay.
Because you spoke of something this morning that did go to the governor's desk and he vetoed it at the end.
That was Senator Berman.
Okay, apologies.
That's okay.
Apologies.
Sorry,
Do you know what, I think it was property taxes. That's what we wanted to do.
It was a study on the overall cost of property tax. No, property insurance.
It was.
It wasn't taxes, as far as I know. I'm not sure. I don't want to
All right.
speak for Senator
Okay.
Berman.
Sorry about that.
It wasn't something that I brought forward, but
Sorry, I didn't mean
we can
to
go
just.
back and look and
Okay.
see what it was. But I wasn't.
We don't have the final on that.
Got it.
Even when we can get the House and the Senate to agree, we still don't get all the way to the finish line.
Okay. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to just address a couple things. One, Florida hasn't updated its flood plan in a number of years. When the hurricanes hit on the West Coast, most of those properties did not have flood insurance. They weren't required to have flood insurance. That's a problem. If you say to me, especially as someone new coming into Florida, you're not required to have flood insurance, but you are required to have wind insurance, I'm going to forego the flood insurance. Then when there is a wind event that results in a flood, the insurance company says, well, it's a flood event, not a wind event, and so therefore we are not liable. So there are things that happen when we do not tell the truth. And I will add that the folks in Tallahassee, and I am not in leadership, the folks who are in charge of Tallahassee are sitting in a glass house, right? Because they're pointing their finger at all the counties and all the municipalities as not being accountable and not being transparent. And the CFO comes into towns all across the state using an algorithm he made up that there are no generally accepted accounting practices involved at all, and really tells counties and municipalities that they are not responsible. Meanwhile, take a look at the state budget. Take a look at the spending that we have done that is not accountable to anyone, specifically $35 million of taxpayer dollars that went to a campaign against citizen initiatives, using people's money against them. If that is not accountability, I don't know what an example of that is. And in terms of the folks in Idaho not wanting to participate in a national catastrophic risk pool, guess who bails out states every single time there is a catastrophe? The federal government. They don't leave Idahoans money in D.C. when they come down to bail out another state. People are paying. It's either their front pocket or their back pocket, which is the same thing that's going to happen with property taxes. We're going to tell people, we have this narrative going on that we're going to eliminate your property taxes. That is a false narrative. First of all, education, school comes right off the top. Law enforcement comes right off the top. Firefighter, right off the top, as they should. But those are the biggest pots, those are the biggest programs that our taxes pay. So what's left of what your savings is going to be is not what Floridians think it's going to be. They would rather spend the $300 to make sure that their garbage gets picked up and have savings on their property insurance. And that is the message I get from my constituents. So maybe all Floridians aren't sending their legislators the same message, but no one is telling me they need their taxes reduced. They are telling me they need their property insurance reduced. And that we can do something about without harming communities. So when we talk about accountability, it should be fair for everyone, including the state government, which in most cases, lately, it has not been. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any other final comments? I've got to say one thing, though, just in passing. I could reinforce your comments here just recently with your comments here just a moment ago with an example that kind of talks to both what Representative Gerwig said and the mayor to my left said, and that was actually we had a citizen summit where we had 80 people show up, and it was about the priorities for the coming year. It was part of our strategic planning activity. And given that we were coming up on a period of time when some of the revenue sources were about to end, ARPA funding for one, and the infrastructure penny sales tax, all about the same time coming to an end. So in a forward-looking way, we said, you know, maybe 4 or 5 years down the road here, we may need to consider changing our path to holding our 1.92 millage rate constant and may have to do something else. Well, we get together with 80 or 90 residents. This past year was more productive than in the past, but hopefully we're on a trend where more and more people will show up. And so we said, well, one of the issues we're going to put on the table and ask you about is, how would you feel if we had to raise, and we gave an explanation of why that might be the case, in 4 or 5 years down the road, or even maybe sooner than that, depending on what the impact actually might be of some of these revenue sources going away. How would you feel about it? And I will tell you that more than 70 of the 80 people actually supported the raising of the tax rate. Now, mind you, we weren't really, and they didn't know. We were asking, and they for all they knew, we were going to be looking at that next budget meeting. Their response was overwhelming. I did not expect it to be that strong. And so along the lines of what Representative Skidmore just said, I'm not hearing that from folks. I'm not. But as I always go into an HOA meeting with, who here would not like to have their taxes reduced? And I raise my hand, okay? So please, please, please be very careful with this going forward. Just as Representative Gerwig said, be careful what you ask for. A, solve it at the lowest levels you possibly can. That's an implied kind of a thing. And then the other thing is, we're just trying to inform everyone about the results here. And it's fair to ask, well, if not that, then what do you have as an idea? And I get that. And that is a very fair request. And we owe you that. And we're staying on top of all these bills as they come out as best we can. And we will try to provide feedback that would be implementable, something that makes sense. Doesn't just say, no, we don't like it and walk away. So we appreciate your input. We really, really do. Anybody have any other final comments? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the public's information, I'd just like to recap what happens in Tallahassee. This is going on my 4th year. What you're seeing and we're discussing today could change 10 or 12 times. And when you see bills that say CS for CS for CS for CS in infinity, that's because that's how many actual amendments and committee substitutes occur. And we sat through sometimes 14 hours, 12 to 14 hours of meetings per day at the end of a session to get it right. And so this discussion is a big help, but it's going to change. It could change 15, 20 times. Secondly, regarding property tax, please know that the House is looking at 8 bills. I don't know what the Senate's doing. We're not sure. And then the governor has his initiative. So we have 3 different forms of government looking at this, and that could also change. So I implore everyone to be patient and provide input as you can, but this is going to be a long process. They're even talking extra sessions, a special session. And just know that this is an hour-by-hour process, and we don't have all the answers, but we hope to get somewhere one day. Thank you.
And if I may.
Thank you all. Yes, Senator.
And in closing, I would just like to say your input is very important and very specific input, not generalities, not out there pie in the sky kind of things, but direct input into how you would solve the property tax affordability problem. And there is a problem. And to your point on the disparity between me and my neighbor, I've lived in my house for 50 years. Mm-hmm. You know,
That's a lot more than mine.
I've lived in my house for 50 years. So the difference in my taxes versus my next door 2 houses down is very different. So you can't you have to be extremely careful in how you do this. So yes, the Senate is being extremely careful. We are listening. We are there to look and see what various things are being presented, and we are going to get as much input as possible before any major efforts go forward. So please, my door is always open.
Thank you very much for that. And are there any other final comments that anyone would care to make? If not, I would like to, first of all, just thank you all. That was one of the best conversations I've had lately, anyway, on this very difficult subject. And hopefully it was informative all the way around. And we got the message. Don't just say no. Provide what you would do in place of that. And it's a hard subject to address because it is so complicated in so many different ways. We definitely appreciate your time here. We appreciate your efforts in Tallahassee. And want to offer, again, our help in any way that we can, because it's only fair for us to help you help us. And at the end of the day, we're all serving the same people. So thank you once again. I want to wish everybody a happy holiday. And this meeting is adjourned.